Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to explain how to create a very basic catch-all tray like the one in this image. So you may think that because this is sort of a 3D piece, if you like, that you need to draw this as 3D. You don't, not in Carveco. What you need to do is just machine 2D vectors. And I'll show you how you can do it. I'm going to do a few different variations of this. The first one is just going to be really straightforward. So if I open up my Carveco Maker, I'm going to create a new model, and this is going to be in inches, and let's do this, let's say 10 inches wide and 6 inches high. So this is just the model space, so I can basically draw whatever I want within this space. And the resolution, just keep that cranked all the way up to the right hand side. Now to change the origin, just click on any of the four corners or in the center. I'm going to use the center for this job. Select OK, and that will place you in the 3D view with the model shown. Then you can start drawing vectors. So that's all that you need to do this, is just draw vectors. No 3D that you need to do in this or relief work. So if I go to create a rectangle, I'm going to left click and then hold it down and drag across, and then enter the width and the height that you want for this. So let's say that I want it to be 8 inches, the finished piece, by 4 inches. And then what I can do is grab one of the corners and bring that in, so I can add radii to the corners. I can bring that right the way down to create the same sort of effect as in the picture. So if I click create and then cancel and then press F9 on the keyboard, and that will put that in the center. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to offset this inwards for the recessed part of this, or the pocket. So if I go to offset vectors, which is here, and I can give this a specific size if I like, or I can left click on the vector and just drag it down until it looks right. So that's what I'm going to do. So let's say about there. So that's 0.3827. So I'll just say that that's okay. If you want a specific size, then you can enter that in there. Make sure that you do it inwards and then offset. So that's all that you need for this job. So just those two vectors. So now you can start machining. Now what I'm going to do is click on the middle mouse button, hold it down and just rotate around. Click on Toolpaths in the project tree, and first of all what I'm going to do is exactly the same as the image that you saw, like this, but I'm not going to put the rad on the bottom, so this is going to be really basic to start with. So to do this, what I'm going to do is an area clear, so this is basically a pocket or a recess. I'm going to click that inner vector, so that's my boundary, and then I'm going to set up my material. Let's say that this is, let's say, 3/4 of an inch. Make sure that you got your materials Z0 at the top or the bottom, dependent on how you set your Z up on your CNC machine. Don't worry about model positioning material, just leave that at the top. That's just for 3D reliefs. And then select OK. And then when I rotate around, you can see that it's set up this material for me, or this stock. So enter a finished depth for that. Let's say that I want to go, I don't know, let's say 1/2 inch for this. Let's add a tool. Now you can add as many tools to this as you like. So you could start off with 1/2 inch and then come down to 1/4 inch if you want to. For this particular job, there are no sharp corners, so I can just use the largest tool that I have. But what I'm going to do is use 1/4 of an inch because I know that I've got one of those in the workshop. So click select and then step over, make sure that you got that set to be around about 40%, and then I'm going to do an offset. So what this does, it will offset the shape and then step inwards or outwards and carry on doing the shape. Make sure that you got this machine safe Z and the home Z set to something not too drastic. Sometimes I've seen people have these set at say 2 inches or something like that, and then it hits the limit or the Z stop, and then they lose steps. So then when it comes back down, the Z is completely off. So I normally set this to about 1/4 of an inch or something, and then select calculate now. So that's generated the toolpath for that. So let's close that, and then what I'm going to do is right click on that and simulation control bar, and then press play. And you can see that this is just hogging out all of that material. If I want to fast forward it, this is the second cut. Now this is all dependent on the step down. So wherever your step down is, that will determine how many depth of cuts this does. So fast forward that, and there you can see the pocket. Now all that I need to do is cut the part out. So to do that, let's turn on the vectors. Now you may see these grey lines. Just turn off the toggle visibility on the 2D. And then I'm going to select that one, go to Toolpaths, and then create a profile toolpath. And this should already be set to the finished depth. So if you want to do this a little bit deeper, so you make sure that it goes into the wasteboard, you can. It's entirely up to you. Click on a profiling tool, let's say the same 1/4 of an inch end mill, and I'm going to ramp this in. And let's take a look at the step down on this. So the step down is 0.1 of an inch. Let's do it, let's say 1/4 of an inch. Make sure that I ramp it in so it's not going to go straight down into the material. It's going to come down at an angle. And I'm also going to add some bridges or tabs to this. So I'm going to do, let's say 4 bridges, and I'll do these, let's say 0.1 and 0.1 again. I'll do 2D bridges and select add. Now if you don't like where these are placed, you can edit the bridges, and then if you zoom in, you should be able to grab that blue section and just move it around like so to wherever you want this to be. Now I've not put that there because the start point's there, so didn't really want to have that on a start point. So I'm going to calculate this now, and you can see here this is where the toolpath comes along and then jumps up and comes back down for the tab. So if I close that, and then let's simulate that one as well, press play, and you can see that it's cut the part out and it's left those tabs in there so the part doesn't move. So that's a really basic tray. Now what about if I wanted to do it exactly the same as this and I wanted to have this rad in the bottom of there? Now what I could do for that is use a ball nose for it. I'll show you how to do that. So if I turn on the vectors, I'm going to turn that off, take a plan view of that, and let's delete the simulation. Okay, so that's just left me with that. Now what I need to do is I'm going to create another toolpath, So this is going to be a profile toolpath, and I'm going to select that, and rather than doing the outside, I'm going to machine the inside of this. And importantly, the finish depth is the same depth that I done the area clear to. So that's going to be 1/2 inch. Don't want to add bridges. Select a profiling tool. Now, importantly, this needs to be a ball nose because it's got that form on there, and that's what you're going to be creating when you run around this shape. So choose the ball nose that you want, or more importantly, the rad that you want in the corner. So let's say that I want a 1/4 inch, so that's going to give me an 1/8 of an inch rad in the corner. Click select, and then I can calculate that. Let's close that, and then let's rename that to ball nose profile, just so I know what that is. And then I'm going to do a simulation control and then press play. Okay, so this is leaving this rad in the corner and it's coming down to a depth. Now what I need to do is, if I were to simulate this area clearance and press play, just fast forward it a touch. What's going to happen is, because this is set to be where I've done it previously, it's going to remove that radius in the corner. So see how that's just taken that rad completely out. So I need to edit that area clearance. So if I take a plan view again, what I need to do is, here you can see the path that this ball nose is taking. What I need the area clearance to do is come up to this path. So at the moment, that's coming up to there, but the trouble is that that's the center of the tool, so it's actually taking it out. So what I need to do is select, let's turn that off, is offset that by 1/2 of the diameter of the tool, so the ball nose tool. So 1/2 of a 1/4 is an 1/8. So 0.125, and then I want to go inwards, and then that is actually my boundary for the area clearance. So if I double click area clearance and then select that one instead and then calculate it, it will go to that one. So what I'm going to do is just grab that ball nose profile, just left click and just drag it to the top, just so I can reorder that. So if I right click, simulation control bar, simulate that again, and then I'll do the same for the area clearance. So now this should just come to the center of this radius. Okay, so that's how you get that rad in the bottom of there. It's done by using a ball nose. So if I simulate that one, you can see that it cuts it out. So that's got the rad in the bottom, and that's pretty much exactly the same as how this particular piece looks. Now what if I wanted to take this even a step further, and I wanted to put a rad on this inside edge. So basically a rad that's the opposite of this. So I can't use a ball nose because that would give me a different type of radius on there. So if I were to use a ball nose, I'll show you what it looks like. So let's use that, and then I'm going to do a profile again. So as I said before, this is just all 2D toolpaths, and it's just using vectors. So if I use that ball nose again, 1/4 of an inch, this is all specified by the depth that you go down to. So let's go down 1/8 of an inch and calculate, and then let's simulate that one. So let's close that, and then let's simulate it. Let's see what this does. Okay, so what's happening there is that it's following it around, and it's just literally going down to a point, and it's giving you this horrible sharp edge here, and it's not really what I'm looking for. So the reason being is that I've got the profile set to outside. So if I go to along and then calculate it, and then let's delete the simulation because it won't give me a true representation. So I'll simulate that, and let's just simulate the cutout so you can see it, and then let's do a control bar on that. Okay, so that's done the right type of thing, but the trouble that I've got is that the radius is going in the wrong direction. Now you may actually want that, don't really know, it's entirely up to you, but personally I would want it going the opposite way. Now to do that, what you need is a custom form tool, or basically a tool called a roundover tool. I'll show you how to use that in this example. So what I'm going to do is delete the simulation, and let's take a plan view, turn on the vectors, and then let's turn off that toolpath. So if I double click that toolpath, that opens up the toolpath for me, and I can't use this ball nose. So what I need to do is click select, and I don't have my particular roundover tool. So what I'm going to do is go here, and I'm going to create a new tool. So I'm going to add a tool, select the drop down, and then somewhere on this list here you've got a roundover tool. So if I click that, you can see that this is giving me the opposite to the ball nose, and this is what I want. This is going to leave that nice rounded edge around the tray. So enter a description for this. So I'm going to say that this is a 1/8 of an inch roundover tool. So enter the units that you want to work in, and the diameter. This is the overall diameter of this. So I'm going to say that this is, I'm just making this up, I don't really know what it is. So I'm going to say that this is 3/4 of an inch overall diameter. So that's from there to there. So this is the overall diameter. Then what you need to do is the arc radius. So this is actually the radius that you're going to be cutting. So this is 1/8, and then it automatically works out the inner diameter for you from here to here. What I need to do is, because the tool is going to be cutting along this specified here, I need to offset this by whatever the distance is from here to the start of the roundover tool, to the start of the form basically. So if I offset by half of the inner diameter, 0.025, it should give me what I'm looking for. For the step down, I'm just entering any figures for these. Don't worry about relative offset. I'll just put relative to inner diameter. And then the step over, let's say 40%. Spindle speeds. And then click OK. And it gives you a little diagram or a little example of what the tool actually looks like. Select OK. And I'm going to select that. So if I were to machine this now whilst here, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So if I calculate that, and then let's simulate these. Okay, and then let's simulate this last one, which is the one that I've just done. So it's got this custom form tool, so you can see that it's this round over tool. And press play. So if I zoom in, you can see it's giving me the shape that I want, but it's in completely the wrong position because it's putting this flat on here and it's putting the round over here, and that's not really what I want. So what we need to do is move that to the left, or more to on the inside. So if I turn on the vectors and then delete the simulation, and I know that the inner diameter, let's just take a look in the tool database. I know that the inner diameter, let's say it is 1/2 inch. So I need to go half of that. So I need to offset this by 0.25, so 1/4 inch. So if we offset that and go 2.5. Now it may be a good idea to put these on different layers and have them as different colours so you know what they are. So offset that. So this very inside one is going to be my profile pass for this round over tool. So if I double click that, and I'm going to use that, click calculate now. Right, let's see what this does. Hopefully this works and I've got my calculations right. So let's simulate that. Simulate the area clear. Simulate the profile. Okay. And then let's simulate this one. Okay, so that's perfect. That's going right around there. And there you can see that it's given me this nice radius on the inside. So let's move this up to there. And I'm going to call this inside round over pass, just so I know. And then I'm going to click Save Toolpaths. So let's move them all over here. And then what I'm going to do is each one of these separately, because I can't do the area clearance and the profile at the same time because I'll cut the part out. So I'm going to use my Onefinity no tool change post and select browse, and let's create a new folder for this. And I'm going to call this catch tray. Now what I've done for this is only the 3 toolpaths. The reason being is that I didn't actually have a round over tool when I looked at the workshop. So I couldn't do the round over rad on the top edge. So all that I'm doing is an area clearance, putting the rad on the bottom, and then cutting the part out. Now what I've done here to set up my Z for the area clearance is move over from the center. The reason that I've done this is that once I've removed all the material, I won't be able to set up the ball nose in exactly the same place. So here I'm just moving back over to the center of the block, and I'm going to set up my X and Y here. So this is the area clearance, hugging out all of that material. Now, as I mentioned, obviously it's removed the centre, so that's why I moved it over. I need to make sure that that ball nose is set up quite well in order to get a nice feathered touch on the area clearance. So I've changed tools, moved the ball nose over, and then I'm dropping this down, setting up my Z height. And when I actually touch on the piece of paper, what I'm doing is bringing it back up by about 10 thou. The reason that I'm doing this is that I purely just don't want this to go too deep. I want this to be a nice feathered finish on there. I want it to blend in nicely. If I have to do the ball nose again, the toolpath, I can just drop that Z height down and rerun the toolpath. It's not really going to be a problem because it's quite a short toolpath. Now I've left the dust shoe off this so you can see it. So here it's ramping in, and then it's just taking that first cut off. Now you'll see straight away on that first cut whether it's looking okay. All that you need to make sure is that you get the depth correct. So this is doing the final pass, and luckily enough it actually feathered out quite nicely. I was prepared to drop the Z down and rerun the toolpath, but it happened to be okay. So I'll switch tools now and set up my Z for the end mill again. And this is just to cut the part out, so I won't really that fussed with this as long as it goes through the material. Now, one mistake that I did make was that I forgot to ramp in on this, but luckily it was okay. So it's just jumping up here where I've added those tabs. So that's finished. So I'm going to take the part off now. And what I've done was sanded it down. Probably could have done a bit more sanding, to be completely honest. And I coated it with Danish oil. And I was quite pleased with the results. Now, obviously this is a very basic design. You could add text or whatever you wanted onto the inside of this if you wanted to. You could have multiple sort of versions of this within a block of wood. It's entirely up to you. And all this was done just using 2D vectors. So it's very, very easy to do. So I hope that you found this tutorial useful, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Goodbye.